Hi, so today we are going to evaluate piecewise functions algebraically and graphically. So first of all, what is a piecewise function? We've seen them a little bit when we were doing continuity, but it is a function that is made up of different pieces, different sections, different rules, depending on what your x value is. So in our first example, you'll see that y is equal to negative x is occurring on this section. That is our rule. And so that's what it looks like graphically. And over here algebraically it says that is our rule as long as x is less than 2. So that means less than 2. So if x is less than 2, we're going to use this all the way from here, this entire section, okay? X is less than 2. And then the function is 6 if x equals 2. So if x actually equals 2, you're that filled in dot at 6. That's our second rule. And then if x is greater than 2, but also less than or equal to 6, we would follow this linear function of 10 minus x. Okay, so depending on if you're giving your equation graphic or your function graphically or with a rule, we're going to evaluate it. Okay, so let's start with some graphical examples down here. Ooh, I'm zoomed in a lot. So this is a worksheet that I used to use in live class. So we're going to kind of look at it. Okay, so we have three different graphs. We have f of x, g of x, and h of x. And so they have different names, and down here we have different problems to do. Okay, so let's start with f of 0. Number 1, that says look at the f graph, go to where x is 0, and go down to find your output. And this is pretty zoomed out, so I'm going to think that those are counting by 1, so 1, 2, 3, so this is negative 3. So although there's not a physical dot there, there is still the graph and the line, and so we can actually calculate that. Okay, h of negative 1 means go to the h graph and look where x equals negative 1. Okay, so where x equals negative 1, there is a discontinuity. Remember, that's called a jump. And so which one are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the closed in dot or the open dot? Always choose the closed dot. Okay, the closed dot means that is the answer. Okay, so when x equals negative 1, y is equal to 0. Okay, g of 0. When x equals 0, we're going to go to the g graph. Okay, here's x equals 0. Which one am I going to choose? The closed dot. So that would be what? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the y value is 4. All right, f of 3. The x is 3. So I'm going to go over to 1, 2, 3. Which one am I going to choose? The closed dot. So that looks like that's also 3. Okay, so that's kind of graphically. You're just picking out which, when x is the input, what is the output, and being careful to always choose the closed dot. Okay, moving on to equations. So here's also a bunch of equations that we're going to look at. So notice we have some different rules. We have f, g, h, and j. So that's going to tell us which function to use. And in that function, there are also different rules depending on what your x value is. So let's just do a couple of examples. 0. F of 0 means that x equals 0. So when I go to my f function, I have to decide which of these rules am I going to input the 0 into. Okay, so this bottom rule says x and it has that symbol. That means x is less than 0. Okay, we want x to actually equal 0. So I'm going to go to the middle rule because there's the or equal then symbol. So when x equals 0, I'm going to use the rule where the answer is just you plug it in for x. X is 0, the output is 0. Okay, let's do f of 3 down here. So I'm still using the f function, but now x is equal to 3. So which rule am I going to use? The top rule, that is x is greater than 3. Okay, and I want it to actually equal 3. So I'm going to use the middle rule again. So if x equals 3, I plug it into the middle rule and we get 3. Okay, what about f of negative 5? X equals negative 5, and so x equals negative 5, so I have to decide which rule to use. The top rule says x is greater than 3. Well, negative 5 is not greater than 3. The bottom rule says x is less than 0. Yep, Negative 5 is less than 0. So I'm going to pop that rule out, x minus 1, and I'm going to substitute my negative 5, and I get an answer of negative 6. All right, let's do an h1. Let's do, I don't know, h of negative 3. Okay, so that means x equals negative 3. Okay, so this rule is kind of interesting. Oh, that's not h. Here's h. X equals negative 3. So which rule is this going to be using? So the top symbol says that we're greater than negative 1. The bottom symbol says that we're less than or equal. So you have to decide which rule you're going to use. If I am x is negative 3, that is less than negative 1, so I'm going to use the bottom rule of 2x. So 2 times negative 3, that answer is negative 6. Okay, let's do a j one. Let's do j of negative 3. So x equals negative 3. So our j rule is telling us that we're going to have an answer that is 3 if x equaled 5. But if x does not equal 5 for every single other value, we're going to use the bottom rule. So x equals negative 3, that is not 5, so we're going to use the bottom rule. So negative 2 times negative 3 plus 1 would give me 6 plus 1, so that answer is 7. But down here, j of 5 means x equals 5. Well, if x equals 5, my output is just 3. All right, so there was quite a few examples of that problem, but let's come down here. So these are some Khan Academy example ones. So let me just do a quick one here. So h of negative 5 means your x is negative 5. So you got to choose which rule you're going to use, okay? I see negative 5 right there. And if x is negative 5, you want to make sure to have that line there. So we're going to use the bottom rule. 4 times negative 5 minus 3. Negative 20 minus 3, that answer is negative 23. Okay, let's do g of 0. Okay, so if we do g of 0, we have to decide which rule to use. That means x is 0. Oh, t is 0 because we have t variables. So the bottom rule says we are greater than 12, and the top rule says you are less than 6. So 0 is less than 6, so we're going to use the top rule. So negative 2 times 0 and 0 plus 1. Negative 2 times 0 is 0. 0 times anything is 0. Okay? G of 12, which rule would I use? I have to be equal to 12, so I'm going to use the middle rule. 5 times 12 divided by 6. That answer, I believe, is 10. 5 times 12 is 60. Yep, and 60 divided by 6 is 10. Okay, so please reach out if you have questions.